expressed by talk show hosts, callers, or guests on the Rob Taylor Report do not necessarily represent the opinions of the hosting platform, subsidiaries, sponsors, or possibly anyone else on the planet or the known universe. From the tinfoil and lead-lined broadcast bunker on the beautiful southern coast of Oregon, it's the Rob Taylor Report. So strap yourself in. Your weekly political therapy session is about to begin. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, the nearly famous Rob Taylor.
Only nearly famous. All right, I want to thank you all for joining me. We've got a really interesting show coming up, and I've been wanting to do this for a while. This is the advantage having a podcast gives people instead of being on the radio. On the radio, you got a strict schedule that you got to stick to. Well, podcast, man, it's like wild horses out here. We're going to let the wild horses run because there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on, and you can't predetermine when something's going to happen and when an issue is going to occur. There are two things that I want to mention before I get to my guest. I mentioned a pool meeting for the Bandon City pool that they're going to try to be bringing back in. And there was someone who told me that they're not going to go for taxes. They're going to try to do this through donation grants and other means of paying for this pool, which I think is a great idea. But if you want to get to that pool meeting, it's 11 a.m. at the warehouse on the boardwalk. You know where the coffee shop is, the fish market, the farmers market, that all that's happening at the warehouse on the boardwalk in Bandon, 11 a.m. Tuesday, January 30th. Once again, the Bandon pool meeting is happening at 11 a.m. at the warehouse on the boardwalk, Tuesday, January 30th. Now, tomorrow we've got a really interesting meeting, and I recommend all of you go because we're having a lot of infighting in the Republican Party. I'm not a registered Republican yet. I'm not a registered Republican yet. I'm considering switching back to being a Republican so I can get more involved with the party because I think they're really screwed up with their leadership right now. But there is a candidate who's going to be here tomorrow night, Thursday, January 25th at 6 p.m. That's tomorrow night, Cafe 101. That's on Broadway in downtown Coos Bay. And we're going to be talking to Monique Despain. Monique Despain is running against Val Hoyle. And what can I say? Val Hoyle, she's best known for what? All that LaMotta money. Got to get a lot of that LaMotta money. And Monique Despain she's got a career in the military. She's a very sound person. I think you ought to check it out. It's once again Thursday, January 25th at 6 p.m. That's tomorrow night at 6 p.m. And it's going to be real interesting. I heard David Brock Smith is going to bring his boys in. I heard they're going to bring in Virgil Osborne, and I heard they're going to bring in Court Boyce. And, of course, I'm going to have my crew there. And we're going to be basically having dueling campaigns going on while we're listening to Monique Despain. It's going to be quite a dichotomy of different issues that people are going to be focusing on. And I can guarantee you it's going to be an intense meeting. I highly recommend you go. It's going to be one of those things that we can all enjoy. Last night, there was a city council meeting, and at that city council meeting, there were two gentlemen there who have been dealing with this issue. And one of those issues is the fact that there's a lot of homeless, and the city is spinning the narrative on the homeless and the crime. I shouldn't even say homeless. It's more about crime. And I'm going to let these guys take the story. I've got Matt Wilbanks, and I got Chris Castleman here. And maybe before I go to you guys, maybe I should play the video clip, the first video clip that I have, and maybe that will start off things. So I'm going to play that real quick here. It's just a quick video.
Why not?
Chris Castleman, I live just outside the city limits. I think there's an agenda item for a committee that's going to be put together.
Yes. You want to speak to that now, or you want to wait until we get to that group?
Can I do both?
No.
I can.
No.
I can't get 6 minutes?
No.
Oh, jeez. Isn't that ridiculous?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
politics.
Politics, yeah, and you're running for one, so you understand. So anyone else?
Yeah, Chris, you're running for one, so you should understand that we're going to stifle you right off the bat, right?
Yeah, that was a little bit of a condescending sneer. I don't think anyone heard me, but I responded to him and I said, I'm not running for politics. I'm running to burn the system down to the ground. So I'll just put that on the record.
You got my vote on that statement alone. I'm all about burning the system down. You were there with Matt. Matt was in the back of the room, and I'm getting some feedback from one of you guys. It's kind of weird.
I don't know if it's me or not.
Just something. Yeah, there you go.
There
you go. That's way better. And so I was watching the videotape, and you really don't see you guys standing in the back too much because they got one of those Google cameras, I think, that switches to the people who are speaking. And it's weird how it moves around across the room and stuff. But Tara Johnson was there. And of course, she got her plenty of time to speak. And I didn't think it was very fair, the narrative that they were trying to spin. And I've got the video, Chris, of the that you took about all the trash. Why don't you tell them? Why don't you start out telling the story about why you were getting so upset, and especially it was with Councilwoman DeNova that seemed to be starting it.
Okay. I don't know how much you want me to get into it, but it started 2 meetings prior. I had sat through a meeting where I brought up the issue of crime in Coos Bay and that it was a problem. And they gave me my 3 minutes and maybe a little more, and it was discussed, but nothing was discussed in terms of a solution to do anything about it. And during that meeting, they spent about 30-40 minutes after I spoke discussing leaves and what to do with the leaves in the street and why that's a huge problem. And they changed the county or the city code to not allow homeowners to put leaves in the street because the leaves are a problem. So then the next meeting I brought some pictures that Matt Wilbanks had taken. He went around Empire the day before or 2 days before and took all these photos of the garbage around Empire. And it was a crazy amount of garbage. And I brought them in. I printed them at Fred Meyer, and I brought them in and I handed them out to all the councilmen and the mayor. And I just said pretty much, look, why did you spend so much time last meeting talking about leaves when your city's filled with garbage? There's garbage everywhere, in the streets, at the businesses, in shopping carts, and you do nothing about it. And they talked about it. And I also mentioned the Anderson apartment. So that's when the Anderson apartment came up. That is in particular at 4th and Anderson. There was a condemned apartment building, and these some of the tenants are how do you say, feral humans. They're not the greatest citizens out there. And so instead
I heard the apartment complex, I know Matt had gone up there and taken pictures at one time, but the apartment complex itself looked like something from I don't know, Animal House, I guess. I don't know. It looked like it was really bad. It was really bad.
So some of them do. I actually helped a lady move out of one of those apartments, and it was heartbreaking because it was totally different than the rest of the apartment building. And it was this cute apartment with character, like you would want to live in. And it had a skylight. I've never seen an apartment with a skylight in the middle. I mean, it was pretty cool. And she was heartbroken, but she did the right thing. She found another place to live, and she moved out in extremely short notice, and she did the right thing. These other people decided not to. They decided to toss their garbage, their belongings all over the parking lot. I mean, I'm talking like 6 spots. And it wasn't just their belongings. These weren't suitcases. There were just open packages of bacon thrown all over the parking lot. And we're talking handicap spots.
Yummy.
That yeah, exactly. The handicap spots that the brewery next door uses. I mean, it's right next to those new Tesla chargers. Anyways, I only knew some of it was out there when I spoke at the meeting, and I addressed it and just said that it was a problem. And the council did take it up and they talked about it, but they talked about the building and the civil process of evicting tenants and how that works. They didn't really address the issue of the garbage. And what I didn't know was that a lot of these tenants that refuse to leave are aggressive. I mean, maybe Matt can talk to it. He went that night after the meeting, and he went and was just sitting in the parking lot, and this guy comes up, and I think he actually smacked your car with something. He came at you pretty aggressive. I mean, not a good citizen, not like what you would expect to have in our city. And that was wild to me. So
Matt, go ahead. Matt, why don't you hold on? Matt, I saw that video and Chris was right. That guy, I thought he was I think it was a chair. Wasn't it an aluminum chair that he had?
I don't think he had a chair in his hand. There was a lot of stuff out there. Though that guy, his mother, his sister, they all lived in one of those apartments up there. They are all, as Chris said, feral humans, long criminal records. The guy's name is Anthony Williams, was the one that was out there. His mom is Sherry Bryant, and then I think his sister's Trina Resendez. Trina is actually fairly easy to get along with, but Anthony is completely mental. I don't know if it's due to drugs or what. But yeah, I was just down there. I wanted to see. Chris had mentioned it to me, and I go down there and do a lap around the parking lot, and he's sitting there hiding underneath a tarp because it was raining. And I sit there and I take some video for a few seconds, and he comes out and basically starts threatening me. It was the same stuff that him and his mom were doing when I was there a couple months prior, because Anthony had been dating the, I think, 20-year-old daughter of a friend of a friend. And we went up there to try and find her because obviously her father doesn't want her involved in that crowd and the drugs. And they got all shitty with us. So it's same thing. This same family, I know there was like a leak in the building. I think that's why it got condemned. This same family was tearing drywall out of their apartment and chucking it out the window onto the public sidewalk below. Not behind the building, but the main public sidewalk below. There was human feces and chunks of drywall. And this chucking it out the window went on for months. So these are not people. These are not people that deserve your sympathy. And I think the guy who owns the building, you could probably classify him as a slumlord. I don't know. He's probably not a nice guy, but these are not people that need your sympathy.
Well, you know, I always hear that term slumlord, and then I always ask the people who use that term, well, was it a slum when you moved in? Because why would you move into a slum if, you know, the guy was a slumlord? But, you know, that's just that low income housing that I think they have to have at a certain point, and it's just not going to be pretty. But you can't have people throwing drywall out. That's just nuts. Let me show the video that Chris took. You know, I always need a motorcycle to go with the rest of my decor in the parking lot, right? Chris, you want to respond to go ahead and continue where you were.
Well, and just to pick up where Matt left off, when I was moving this lady out, there were holes into the other apartments where these feral people were breaking into the other apartments through the drywall. I mean, I've heard of burglars breaking a door down. I've never heard of them coming through the walls. That's what rats do. That's disgusting. Yeah. And also the way that the roof caved in, from what I've heard, and this is from the people who live there and the contractor working on it, is that because the homeless, the bums, were allowed to go in through that building and access the roof, they were living up on the roof. They filled up all the downspouts with their garbage. That made you've seen a roof that, like a flat roof with a ledge, it filled up like a swimming pool, and the roof caved in because it filled up from the bum trash. I mean, that's
So,
why it got
so maybe this guy wasn't a slumlord. Maybe it turned into a slum because of the bums, right?
I mean, he certainly made poor judgment in who to rent his apartments to, but yeah, it was a big mess. And I spoke with the chief of police about it last night. You know, there were known criminals in that building. You have burglars who would go out and rob houses and come back, and they'd go through the stuff that they burglarized, that they stole from the house, and they'd go through and sort it and say, you know, this one I'll keep, this one goes to the Mexicans, this one I'll use to buy fentanyl. You know, that's what happened in that apartment building, in some of the apartments. It's a shame. But anyways, the garbage that I saw the next day that I filmed there, I posted it online. And when I posted it, I said, call the mayor, call the chief of police. This has to get dealt with. It's insane. And that's it. And apparently, so that fast forward to the meeting we were just at last night, apparently that was misinformation. Lucinda and some other councilmen and the mayor had a problem with that. They were upset with me that I were to leave the meeting and then the next day go film the garbage and post it online and call for action. I mean, instead of focusing on the problem and fixing the garbage and picking up litter in the city and prosecuting the people who put it there, they're going to come after me for fucking filming it? That's insane.
I like how they keep using the term misinformation. That's the term that the senator who's attacking me, he and some of the Republican establishment, that's what they keep saying about me, misinformation. And just like you were talking about, they don't tell you what the hell that misinformation is. They're not even explaining it to you.
No, and I asked that at the meeting when they first came at me with this misinformation crap. I said, what was I misinforming anyone about? Like, what was the issue? And she explained that I just didn't tell the whole story, that I left some things out. So I said, okay, well, talk about leaving things out. I was informed the next day that one of the police officers was assaulted by one of the ex-tenants from that building. And that happened before the meeting I was at. And there were police officer representatives at that meeting, law enforcement representatives, and they didn't say anything about a law enforcement officer being assaulted. So I brought that up yesterday. I said, you're accusing me of lack of information or withholding information when you guys are guilty of just that very thing. And that's something that's pretty important. I think the public deserves to know that there's a situation that is so toxic in the middle of our city that a police officer is being assaulted. I mean, they didn't even answer that yesterday. I repeatedly asked, is that true? Was a police officer assaulted? And I know it's true. I know for a fact it's true.
Right.
But they would not admit it last night. That's deranged.
That is absolutely deranged. Can you hear me? I had to turn my mic down.
Yeah.
All right. Hold on. Okay, there we go. One of the things that I noticed was that they kept accusing you of the misinformation. They kept telling you that you shouldn't be spreading this stuff. And wow, I'm still getting that feedback. That's weird. And,
sorry, I hope it's not me.
I think if me and Chris mute our mics while you're talking, it'll fix it.
All right. Okay. All right. So, and that fixed it. That did fix it. So, one of the things that that I found interesting was Chris Chapinar got up and he said that they can't give out this personal information, which I thought was strange because he wasn't talking about any specific officer. He was just talking about one of his officers. And there's no reason that he could have gone out to the public and said, look, one of my officers got hurt. He got hurt and explained the situation, and it shouldn't have been a big deal. And that wouldn't, and you even tagged it, Chris. It's not misinformation, it's missing information that seems to be the problem, which then they accuse you of the misinformation when you give what they called your spin. I love how they kept saying it was your spin. You want to comment on that?
It was pretty insane. I mean, to be standing there and I think the word is gaslighting. Just to simply having people throw something at you that they're doing right in front of your face. And it was Councilman Stephanie Kilmer, I believe is her name. I mean, she had brought it to my attention online that I was spreading misinformation, and I appreciate that she came directly to me. But we addressed it. Like, she said what she had to say. I responded to her. She didn't respond back. I figured the issue was closed. And then all of a sudden, I walk into an ambush at the meeting. By the way, I was invited to that meeting. I was invited to it last week, and I had voicemails left by the city manager and an email from the city manager requesting that I be at that meeting so that I can be on some committee to help with this problem. And then to walk into an ambush where I'm told I have 3 minutes to talk, and I'm spreading misinformation. And Lucinda made these comments, the council president made these comments about she only wants people on the committee who are genuine, you know, who are altruistic and want to be there for the right reasons. She was implying that because I'm running for public office, I somehow have ulterior motives. I mean, it's flipping insane. Matt, you had a reaction to that. I feel like you have a comment.
Well, it's even worse than you just being invited to the meeting. Your name was listed on the public announcement on the city website. Literally. I had a conversation with another friend earlier, and this whole 3-minute thing is ridiculous. I understand why it exists, but particularly in the case last night, like, you were the one person who volunteered to be on that committee that wasn't already an elected official, and they put your name on the thing, and then that crap happened. It's just ridiculous.
It is, and I even addressed it right to them. I just said, this is insane. You're essentially asking me to only be on the committee if I agree with the spin that you put on things. I mean, right. Benetti, if you listen to the meeting, he actually says that he doesn't want me to come into a meeting and then go online the next day and talk about something that was already discussed at the meeting. I mean, that is just insane to ask me to do that.
I think that's freedom of speech. And I had a quick reaction. How long did Tara talk? Pretty sure it was longer than 3 minutes.
Between all of them, I mean, it was like a half an hour.
So you're on the invitation.
Why don't I play the video?
Yeah.
Let me play the video. Hold on. I'm still having trouble with my microphone. How's that? There you go. My sound is, I got to play with that a little bit more. Let's see.
So
yeah, I think I got Tara Johnson.
Can you explain what happens? Do they come into a building? You said they stay in their car. Are they on the property or?
So if they're on the property, they have to be in the building, whether it's at the Salvation Army or the Devereaux Center. That's not negotiable. I'm talking about people who maybe are utilizing the waterfront in North Bend in their approved camping area. So those are the people in the vehicles. Pastor Ford has some at his church that are still in their vehicles and haven't chosen to come to the Warming Center. So, but anybody that comes onto our property is to be down in the vehicles and they're in our location or his location.
And are they allowed to leave or they are allowed to?
Yes. Yeah. And we have cameras that monitor the upper parking lot area, and our staff deals with that if there's people up there hanging around.
All right.
And so there she says it. She says it loud and clear that people who are in the parking or who have a car there are supposed to be down in the basement, and there's supposed to be no one in the parking lot, but that's not what's going on at the Devereaux Center. And we know this because we've had people go down there and actually make drug purchases and have been propositioned by people who are prostitutes.
So real quick on this. So here's this came up during the meeting. So you just heard Tara say that if they're on this is when the warming center is open. So a piece you didn't play is she said later that this winter the warming center has only been open 19 days. So those rules that you have to be in the building is those nights when the warming center is open. Chris brought it up later on, and I believe it was Lucinda was like, "Oh, she didn't say that," and I'm like, "Yes, she did. Yes, she did."
It was everyone in the room. I mean, everyone was like, "No, he didn't. No one said that."
Yeah, it's just mind-boggling to me. She gets all the time in the world. Wasn't she spreading misinformation? They don't call her out on it.
Yeah.
Well, it fits their narrative.
That was honestly, that moment right there was the most insane moment I've ever experienced in a meeting, in a public meeting. I mean, honestly. So I had just been accused of misinformation. I then addressed it. And seconds later, I mentioned that Tara Johnson stood up in the meeting 10 minutes prior and stated something. And I had a chorus of people in that room telling me that that was false. I mean, that was absolutely epic. I have the video of that, but
Oh,
well, am I still there?
you're back.
Oh,
You
I
popped
don't know
out
if
for
you.
a minute.
It
I don't know if.
disappeared for like 2 seconds.
Oh, well, I don't know if you have the video of when I brought that up, but it was absolutely insane. They all just sat there and said, "No, she didn't say that." And I'm like, "Yes, she did." And Matt shouts from the back, "Yes, she said that." And then finally somehow they snapped out of it and they were like, "Okay, I guess she did." And I'm standing there with my jaw on the floor going like, how are we supposed to solve these massive issues for our community, like opening the jail, cleaning up our streets? How are we supposed to solve these issues if we can't even agree on what some woman just said in a public meeting 10 minutes prior? I mean, it's
Yeah,
fucking insane.
it blew my mind that that was exactly what was happening. Is just like you said, she said it. You said she said it, and then the council's all, "Oh no, she didn't." But then when Matt shouted out from the back, because you could hear him very clearly, it really made quite a bit of difference. It's like they all of a sudden, "Oh well, yeah, maybe she did. Maybe she did say that. Yeah, maybe."
And it totally obscures the whole point I was trying to make. The point I was trying to make was Tara stands up there and says that, hey, we don't allow people to congregate on our property unless they're there for a service, unless they're in the building getting a service. And that's completely not the case. And I was making that point that if you drive by the Devereaux Center, you can do it right now while you're watching this podcast. You can drive by at night and it's a complete freak show. There's people walking all over the place like zombies. And if you're so inclined, walk on up there. I bet within seconds, somebody will offer you dope. They will offer you dope. And if you want a blowy, you can go take that dope down to the handicap bathroom and get a blowy from the girl if you trade her your dope. I mean, it's fucking crazy.
That is absolutely nuts. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous that they're making these claims and we all know it's bullshit. It's just complete utter bullshit.
But you got
So
to give
you
them credit. They're pretty skilled at what they do because they were able to obscure the whole thing. They played this whole game and they won. They were able to show that they can confuse everybody and maybe use some like sort of psyops. Everybody tells me that Gabe, the sheriff, was in psyops, and maybe he
yeah,
was, but I don't think he's very good at it. But these people, it's at the city of Coos Bay, they nail it. I mean, they perform this psyops thing at these meetings, confuse the shit out of everybody, and you can never get your point across. So no progress is ever made.
it's funny you mentioned Gabe. Yeah, every time I talk to him, and the fact that he has been in psyops, you always wonder: is he doing one of those jujitsu mind fucks on you, or is he actually being honest when he talks to you? I don't know. But you went up there and you did testify. They did actually let you testify. And so you were able to get your point across somewhat. Go into your testimony because I don't have that. That was a long clip.
Yeah, I mean, the premise of what I wanted to talk about was the contrast between how they paint things in their meetings and in their press releases versus what is actually happening in reality. So, for example, like the Anderson apartment building, they're going to paint it as a landlord tenant issue. It's a civil issue. It's something that the courts are going to have to handle. Meanwhile, their city parking lot is being completely trashed by aggressive feral bums and a police officer was assaulted. So that's the contrast. Or you can take the Devereaux Center, for example. Oh, it's this great place that helps homeless people. And it is
Right.
during the day, but not at night. And they paint this picture that it's always helpful, it's the best thing on earth. And it's not. It's degrading to Empire. It's disgusting. It's not helping their mission, and it's not helping our city. So I kind of highlighted different areas of this contrast where it's just one thing, like the Property Watch program. Coos Bay Police implemented this Property Watch program, and it sounds like a good thing. You as a business owner can apply and sign a piece of paper that allows the police officers gives them the authority to trespass people when you're not around. That's great. The problem is in practice, when a business owner is not there, the police don't typically do anything. They have been better about it recently, but I have called in the past and said, hey, there's a business here that's part of the Property Watch program, and there are bums camping on the property or have an RV or have litter everywhere, and it needs to be taken care of. And they'll show up and they give these people so many warnings. They give people the benefit of the doubt. All the bum has to do is tell them, hey, I have permission to be here. Well, shit. I mean, that just obliterates the whole Property Watch program, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I had.
Sorry, guys.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that happened at Coomyons. Remember with Justin and Pearl Dennis?
100%.
They're on Property Watch, and they just bold-faced lied to the cops, saying that they had permission. And the cops, I guess they tried calling the owner, but they couldn't get a hold of him. And once they did get a hold of him, they found out it was a lie, and they finally got rid of him. But it's like, if you're on Property Watch, the default position should be you can't be here.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
And I brought that up last night. I brought that up. I tried to bring it up in the meeting. And then after the meeting, I spoke for almost 2 hours with Chief Chapinar and one of his captains. And
Hold on. Before we go into that, Chris, I want to show leading up to that what happened and how you ended up in the parking lot, because that it was one clip that I think is the most important part and why we're doing this tonight
on a regular basis. And we can sit here and it's unfortunate that Chris feels the way he does. There's ways that we set up this committee to try to resolve some of these issues he's talking about, and they're going to be ongoing. I would love it if things were better than they are, but they're not. So we have to kind of juggle it. I'm available to talk anytime. And my phone number's on the website. Call me.
I don't want to hear excuses.
I'm speaking.
Why would I talk to you and hear 1,000 excuses that you
Look,
can't sign
if you're going to continue to interrupt me, I'm going to ask you to leave. You had your point. You had your time. We answered your questions. You might not like them, but we're giving you what we know factual. You can spin it any way you want. That's your prerogative. You can go on Facebook and do whatever you wish and make those comments. I'm making a point that if anyone else wants to call me, they can. And I talk to them. I do this on a regular basis. People call me, I meet for coffee, and we discuss things. We might not agree. We might not come to a consensus, but sometimes we get good ideas, and sometimes we're able to resolve.
And why would you be offended if I asked people to call you?
Chris?
You were offended that I asked people to call you.
No, I'm not.
You were.
I
You
know.
yelled at me up there. You said you told people to call me.
Again, you misunderstood. I said,
Oh my God.
you asked people to call me, but you don't call me.
I don't want to call,
But then
I
don't.
need to
Chris,
get more excuses.
you're
from you.
done.
I don't know how they do it in Mendocino, but we have rules here. We have decorum, and please, get it together.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, do I know you?
Yeah, I'm Joe. I was watching the meeting online, and I had to come down here because of
You
you.
yell at me, okay.
Get it
All right.
together.
All right. Now we're gonna move on. Okay?
Why?
Chris, one more time, and I'm gonna escort you out, okay?
And what if I don't leave? Will you finally enforce criminal trespass?
Sir, you can leave. Go on, leave. You've had your opportunity to speak. If you're not going to speak in a professional and an adult manner, I'm going to ask you to leave. Okay, so just go ahead and.
Oh, so you're not going to? Is it now trespass?
so that, hey, I love that guy who just came in off the street. I don't know how you do things in Mendocino, pal, but that ain't how we work in Coos County. And they're not yelling at him about his bad decorum. It's only you. I love how that they didn't touch on that. But I also like how the mayor talks about, Chris, you could go out there, you could put any spin you want on it. When these people up there, sitting there, the councilors, the mayor, they are constantly putting a twisted spin on every damn thing they do.
It's pretty wild. I'm glad you have that clip. I didn't really remember it quite the same way. Wow. I mean,
Yeah.
There's so much stuff right there in that little clip. I mean, I don't know if the clip had the full thing, but Benetti essentially got upset with me because I had said on Facebook, I told people to call the mayor. And he got upset with me about that earlier in the meeting. And that was his gripe. That was his problem with what I did, is that I went online the next day and asked people to call him. And then you see him there in that clip asking people to call him. And I just don't understand. And that was my problem. And that's what I was trying to get across. Like, why are you telling me I can't tell people to call you, yet you're sitting here in this meeting asking people to call you? That's insane. And I get it. Like, I'm not following decorum. I'm not being professional, but this is who I am. I'm not going to change. This is just who I am. But Benetti, you're being condescending and rude. You're being a fucking asshole to someone who took the time to come to your stupid fucking meeting. I mean, it was like an hour in, maybe more. I mean, I have better things to do with my time. And it was pretty insane.
I told you a couple of weeks ago that they are going to try to put you on a committee. Remember, I told you that?
You did. Yep. And so that was the entire premise. I mean, that was the point of this meeting is to, well, no, prior to this, they were trying to put me on a committee meeting. And this meeting, I guess, was to set that up or talk about it. And the events that transpired between the two meetings with me putting stuff online, I guess, pissed them off that they can't control me, and they like people on committees that they can control.
Right. But Matt, I think you can respond to this. Matt, I think you can respond to this. You've been dealing with these people for a long time, and you got frustrated and you walked out. And we've been to a lot of contentious meetings, and this is the same thing that they do over and over again. Kind of tell us what, at that going up to that point before you just walked out, what was your analyst idea of what was going on with that?
I mean, it was exactly what I said when I walked out. It's a fucking waste of time. On a pop culture reference, you guys remember Empire Strikes Back when Han and Leia are arguing, and he calls her a committee because she's a politician, and she says, "I am not a fucking committee," right? It's a running joke about how ineffectual committees are, and it's like, and you're right, it's exactly what they tried to do to Chris. But we're going to put our trouble child on the committee where he can't really do anything, but he can sit there and rage in the corner. I had several people try to convince me to be on the committee because I'm out there seeing the trash and taking the photos and stuff like that, and I'm like, I don't think so. It's not going to work. So yeah, I was like, this is exactly what I expected. So I stormed out, and then he lasted about 20 seconds longer than I did.
Here's a comment. Jeff Pete is watching this right now, and I don't know if you can see this comment at the bottom. It says, they interrupted Chris Castleman, but how dare him interrupt them? What a fucking joke. And I know Jeff, he's saying that they interrupt us all the time. They give you 3 minutes, and you're not allowed to speak any further than that, especially at Coos Bay. And Matt knows this because he's been there with me several times, and they will have the cops get up and stand right behind me sometimes just 30 seconds before that last third minute is up. And, it's just absolutely ludicrous. And that's kind of why I wanted to do this show, because I wanted to give you guys the chance to tell your side of this, because you never will. And I mean, normally you won't ever get the chance. But the thing is that they will say stuff during their comment period at the end of the meeting. They'll say stuff throughout the meeting referring back to you. And they did a couple of times after the meeting. I don't know if you watched the full video of that. And so I want to go to you, Chris, about that.
Yeah, and also I skipped over the guy at the end walking into the meeting, just blasting in the door and screaming at me. And Benetti sits there the whole time and doesn't address it. I think he even says thank you at the end. I mean, that's crazy. You're yelling at me about decorum. You're kicking me out you're having a police officer kick me out for lack of decorum, but a fucking dude walks in off the street and interrupts the meeting. I mean, come on. It is a fucking joke. Thank you, Jeff. Absolutely. And then Chapinar at the end, I guess essentially what really got me kicked out was my comment about, are you finally going to enforce criminal trespass now? Like, that's how you're going to get me out of the meeting, is by threat of actually enforcing criminal trespass. And they do. Chapinar and his police force have a tough job, especially in this society, in this age. They have a really tough job, but they
especially in this state. In this state, it's tough on cops, and and we've talked about this, and they've got to protect their paycheck, they got to protect their pensions. But at some point, when are they going to start stepping up and speaking out? I mean, at a certain point, is your job really worth it to get stepped on and treat it like shit and treat it no better than the criminals that you're going out and arresting? I don't get it, but I understand it.
Can I say something in there?
Sure.
So I'm just going to say this as a message to all the cops in Coos County. Okay. I know a lot of cops. I used to be a reserve. I did security for years. A lot of these guys are my friends. The simple fact of the matter is, me, Chris, you, and tons of other people in our group and our friends are the biggest supporters of constitutional law enforcement in the county. You know who doesn't support Chapinar and his officers? The people sitting at those chairs up front. They're the ones that don't. They're the ones that are allowing an environment to continue where an officer can get nailed in the hand with a stick when he's trying to enforce a condemned building. It just happened again today. They towed a trailer over on Shoneman, and the word that went out on the scanner, on the police radio, was that the female in there headbutted an officer because they were trying to tow the trailer. This continues. We're the ones not wanting those officers to get hurt. And that environment is continuing them to get hurt. Like, how long do you think this is going to last until there's a bunch of young officers on Coos Bay right now. Okay. Guys that used to work for me are on with Coos Bay right now. Okay. Guys I hired, good guys. And they're out there freaking getting their asses kicked by a bunch of bums on a daily basis. And I don't really blame Chapinar, but I blame the people above him because they don't defend him.
And it's funny you're talking about those young people. There's a new sheriff's deputy. I believe his name is Seven Converse. If it's the same Seven Converse that I know, I used to coach that kid when he was just about 8 years old. And now he's a deputy, and he can only be like 24, 25 years old. So he's a young man that's going into a profession that it really sucks because there's no one who has their back. They're taking shit from people, who are out in the public, who see the lawlessness that's going on. And then they're taking shit from the people who are supposed to have their back and don't have their back anymore. And all three of us who are in this video right now, all three of us have had death threats. In fact, some of us have had death threats from the same people. And in fact, Matt, you were just recently assaulted. I'll go back to the meeting, and because I want to hear about after the meeting, but tell people about the assault that you just suffered at the hands of God. I can't think of that guy's name, but you can tell the story.
It's Robert Blakely. So backstory on this: when I first started doing videos for the Neighborhood Watch, one of the first good things I caught on video was Robert Blakely smoking fentanyl in the Empire Post Office. Now, when I had so when I had the meeting with Tara, she invited me to see what they do. She literally blamed me for Robert not being able to get a job because I put that video online. So it's my fault that he smoked fentanyl,
Right.
I made him do it. So come up to a few days ago, I was watching some bums in the Cranberry Suites parking lot because they had an issue with people camped there. They were trying to get rid of them. And one of them happened to be Robert Blakely. And I saw him kind of disappear where I couldn't see him. So I went around the block and he was hidden behind a business that me and several other watch members have permission to chase people off from. They have tons and tons of issues. So I drive slowly past and I see him hiding back there between a car and the building. And I instantly knew what he was doing. I was like, he's back there doing his drugs. So I parked, I turned my camera on and I creeped around the building and I caught him right on camera. I surprised the living hell out of him. He freaked when he saw me. Didn't even notice me for like 20 seconds. And then immediately rips into me, calling me a faggot, blah, 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 get a job. It's like, you want to say to him like, Robert, I have a full-time job and you're a crackhead. I don't know what the insult is. But he immediately starts getting in my face. He came at me like 2 or 3 times. And the second or third time, I put my hand flat palm on his chest and pushed him back and said, stay away from me, which that's a normal tactic. It's taught in security. It's taught in law enforcement. If someone is being aggressive and they get into your bubble, basically within an arm's reach repeatedly, and you think they're going to be a threat. Robert's threatened to kill me before, okay? So he's definitely a threat. So I put my flat palm on his chest and pushed him back, and he socked me straight in the forehead, pulled back and punched me straight in the forehead. And it didn't really hurt. He hits like a sissy, but I was kind of shocked. I'm like, he actually hit me. Okay, all right. So we had words, and he's running his mouth at me, and I was kind of running my mouth back at him, telling him to get the F off property. I was screaming at him. I was freaking done. So chased him off, and as far as I know, they still haven't caught him. They got probable cause for his arrest, but get punched for trying to protect somebody's property.
Well, that's about right. I've got a question that someone just asked in the chat room. It says, and this is from Oregon Outlaw 2000. He says, do the homeless hang out at the new corporate box stores in Coos Bay along the waterfront?
We listen to the scanner constantly, and we hear a fair amount of calls down there. I don't know. I wouldn't say it's a primary homeless hangout. They get a lot of drunks because of the bar, and you get some other odd calls down there. I wouldn't call it a primary homeless place, though.
Do you think that it's because it's owned by a lot of like the Drobots are one of the people who own that, and they're a very wealthy family? Do you think they get special credence from the police department or protection that most people don't because it's new?
Well, I mean, the Property Watch program is open to any business in Coos Bay. I'm sure they probably check on it more often than any other place, just because it's brand new and it's touristy, and we don't want it to get dilapidated. But I wouldn't accuse them of being unfair with it.
Yeah. All right. That's so for Oregon Outlaw, there you go. He was interested in that. And I kind of was interested in it too, because I don't see a lot of people down there hanging out as much as inside the downtown area. It just seems, and I would imagine if I was a property owner, I would make it very accommodating for the police to come down there. You know what I mean? I'd serve them some free coffee or something to make sure they were coming down there. Chris, I want to kind of circle back to you, and I want you to finish up about that conversation. After you were kicked out of the meeting, you got to speak to Chapinar, and you had told a really good story to me about the apartment buildings right next to the city hall. I want you to take it from there.
So yeah, they're not apartments. It's a business complex. Multi-tenant business complex. But yeah, so this meeting last night was at the firehouse on Elrod, and right there on the corner, right next to it is I believe there's like 6 or 8 tenants, little small businesses at the Compass building. And as I'm waiting out in the parking lot to speak with Chapinar and stuff afterwards, I noticed that there's 3 bums camped out in that building, in the alcove in the building. And as I'm walking around the building looking at it, I see a Property Watch sticker in one of the windows. So I call the number on the Property Watch sticker and tell dispatch that there's people camping out at the business and that they're on Property Watch. The cop shows up and runs their names, but he tells dispatch that he can't do anything because the whole entire complex is not on property watch, and that it is only a few specific businesses on the south end of the building that belong to property watch. So he leaves, and I call back because I inform them that this sticker that I'm looking at is indeed on the business that they are sitting in front of. It's like out of all the tenants in that building, they are indeed sitting right in front of the business that is on property watch. And I inform dispatch, and she gives me hell about it. She's really annoyed that I'm calling back. And as we're talking, it turns out that one of the people who they ran, one of the names, had a warrant. So they're en route anyways. They end up coming back with 3 squad cars, and they arrest one of the guys. Well, what do you think they do with the other 2 bums? They leave them there. They leave them there with all their garbage and do nothing. So I'm literally kicked out of a meeting where I'm addressing the contrast between city council bragging about a property watch program, yet minutes later, and I was told, by the way, that I'm only talking about outliers. Outliers is a statistical term. If I'm able to walk right out of a meeting and encounter a situation that the property watch program fails to solve, then that's not an outlier. I mean, that's like the status quo right there. It's just crazy. So the situation was being resolved, or being, I don't know what the word for it is, but the situation ended right when Chapinar and his captain walked out. And they asked me how it went. They were like, how'd that go? And I think they were expecting me to say it went well because they just watched this guy get arrested. And I looked at them and I go, not good at all. And they were like, really? How so? And I'm like, because there's 2 bums still sitting there and they're on property watch. And they were like, yeah, but not the whole business complex. So it's complicated because technically the steps they're sitting on aren't, like there's always these excuses. And that's what I bring up to the city council, that there's always these excuses, these reasons, and they might be valid. Like the cops might not have legal authority to do anything in that situation, which they don't, because Chapinar and I discussed it in detail and ultimately concluded that they literally do not have the authority to do anything in the moment. But that still doesn't solve the problem. And that's my point in all of this. That is why I'm running for commissioner. That's why I'm putting my face out there. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing. That's why I'm going to the meetings, because we have to come up with a solution. We can't just sit on our hands and say that there's no way to solve it. I mean, there is a way to solve this stuff. It just hasn't been done yet. And we need to do it.
Yeah, we seriously need to do it. So let me ask you, this is going to go out to a lot of people. There's going to be a lot of people to see it. In fact, Base and Tackle Rob Doug Washington. My apologies to him, but he just said, let me put up his comment there. It says, Chris for commish, and I'm backing you too. I think you have a lot of great ideas. And whether you win or not, you're an important integral part of this race, because you got Drew Farmer, who's sitting on the council that just kicked you out. And then you've got Bob Main, who's part of the county establishment. And that's a huge problem there, because, he's been there for a long time. And then you come in and you're going to have to push them all the way to the right again, because they're going to see what you're doing and they're going to have to be more right. And Drew, it's going to be hard for him because he's a lefty. He's the one who supported the pride flag, but didn't support the Christian flag because it was offensive. He's the one who pushed that inclusionary resolution, which literally told the citizens that they're too ignorant to understand their racist past, which must mean they're racist overall. It was incredibly insulting and indignant. So how do you think what people saw at that meeting and what they're seeing here tonight is going to affect your campaign for commissioner?
So So alls I can kind of tell people about me, because I'm kind of new and they don't really know who I am, is I'm not a politician. I'm I'm not what you're going to see typically when you go to these meetings, and I'll never be. I will promise you that. I will not change. I'm not going to make all these promises and then go up there and become some different person. And it's hard. It's not easy to do that. I've already found myself when I go to these meetings, you go in there and you want to be a part of that team. You want to work together to solve the problems, and you want to be nice to them, and you want to follow what they're doing and find a resolution and compromise. But every time when I walk away, I find myself, I have to go, look, you have to recenter. You have to realize what you're up against. And that's part of their game. They try and change you. They try and make you like them. And if there's just more of them elected each year, guess where we're going to continue to go? Downhill.
Yeah.
That's where we're going to go. So the ironic thing, when I think to myself, what politicians, or what, let's call them leaders, what leaders in this community exist that feel that the way we do and want to solve the problems as genuinely as we do? Who are these leaders? And I don't really see any. The only one, ironically, that I actually agree with most is Bob Maine, which is unfortunate because he's in the position that I'm trying to obtain. Now, he could choose to retire. That's a choice he could make. I don't think he's going to make that choice, and that's unfortunate. But, you know, if he does win, at least I know that somebody is in that seat that thinks like me. But the unfortunate thing that I can't overlook is that he's been in that seat for like 15 or 16 years. And these problems have existed during that time span, and they've only gotten worse. So that's all I can say about that. But honestly, Bob and I agree on almost everything, whereas I don't agree with most of these leaders out there. They'll say one thing in private, but at a meeting, it's completely different. A couple of the councilmen, including Drew Farmer, and I have had private conversations, and they go really well. We all agree. I mean, everybody thinks crime is an issue. Everybody wants the jail open. But in practice, when they get up there in those seats, they don't do anything to solve the problem. And a lot of them have been in those seats for a long, long time. And it's time for someone new. It's time for different ideas. It's time for some passion. We need people in those seats that are going to stand up there and say, this is crazy. This is an emergency. This shit needs to be solved today. We don't have that right now. In Coos Bay, North Bend, Myrtle Point, Coquille, nowhere in Coos County do we have people standing up and saying, this ends now.
So Doug Washington, he just posted another comment, and he says, not a politician is the best sales pitch. Lifetime. Professional politicians become the problem. They become institutionalized and cease to think like the common man does. And I totally agree with them. I think that they get in there, they get into a vacuum where all they're hearing and all they're seeing is all the dogma from the government that's pushing them into this bureaucratic bullshit that we are tangled with and tangled up with right now with the state. And your whole idea of coming in fresh, that I want to tear it the hell down, and rebuild it. You don't want anarchy. You just want to rebuild it so that the top priority is justice, true constitutional laws that are going to be enforced. Am I off on that, or are you right? Is that right?
No, absolutely. And my approach is solution focused. Like, we will solve the problem one way or another, and we will utilize every option we have available. And that goes whether I win the commissioner seat or I don't. And I'm operating under the plan that I don't win, because that's the only thing I can control is living the life I'm currently living, which is not a commissioner. So that's why I'm going to these meetings. That's why I'm meeting with the sheriff and the commissioners and the city council members. Drew and I met and we discussed options that are possible to approach. And I'm putting them out there on my website. That's why I'm doing this, because I only have certain options. Us as citizens only have certain options. And if our politicians, if our leaders fail to act, they are severely limiting the options that the citizens have. And I've addressed this with our leaders. I've put it down on a piece of paper and explained it to them. If you fail to act and we continue to go down this road of lawlessness, us as citizens only have a small number of options. And I will try every option before this one, but you all know what the last option is, and that's a revolution. And I'm not going for anarchy. We need to find some way to replace it with a better system that works. But that's what will happen if these problems are not solved. I refuse to live in a society of lawlessness. And I think you guys do too. We're not going to live in a community where bums and criminals are able to run free with no consequences. That is not acceptable. I don't accept that. I don't think you guys accept that. And more people need to stand up, make public statements that this is unacceptable, and we will take action as citizens if necessary. And it's getting very close to the brink. These politicians have been put on notice. If they don't take action soon, things are going to start to get a little frisky. I'm just telling you.
So I think that both of you and Matt, especially you, Chris, because you're running for office, you need to be at that meeting tomorrow with Monica Despain and her campaign, the meeting that she's having, because of the fact that all of the top representatives who represent us in the state, many of them sold us out. David Brock Smith has sold us out. Dick Anderson has sold us out. I'm not too happy with Boomer. Virgil actually is not too bad. It's his voting record isn't too bad. But you look at the ones who are representing us, they have sold us out in many ways. And I think as what you just said about becoming a commissioner and your campaign speech that you just made there, which was beautiful. I loved it. I think you need to go there and impress upon our leaders exactly what we're suffering locally. So I hope you can make it tomorrow at 6:00 at Cafe 101. I'm going to be there. And I talked to Matt about it. And I want to go to Matt because I got a question here from Amy from the Inglewood Diking District. And she says the money bum count, the point in time count, goes down if you run them off. Don't want to lose those extra government bucks. Now, do you think they're doing this at a really bad time? I thought, because it seems like there would be less of them here because of wintertime. But like I was telling you before the show, I was walking around Tom and Giggs in the neighborhood there, right across from Devereaux. There's a shitload of bums out there. So what do you think about this point in time count? And do you think that this is just another government scam that they're using to buffer up the numbers?
Well, this is a tough one because when we're talking about people that we might call a bleeding heart or the opposition, there's two different main motivations for these people. You have what's called true believers. They literally, they're a bleeding heart. They actually care for these people and they think what they're doing is going to make their situation better. They're a true believer. Then you have the corrupt ones who just latch onto the system for personal gain. I know a lot of people say Tara is just in it for, she's corrupt, so she's doing it to pad her pocketbooks, blah, 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 blah. I think she's a true believer. I wouldn't call her corrupt. I might call her enabling evil, but I wouldn't call her corrupt. So when you're looking at the point in time count, I don't know who, it's done all across the country. So I don't know who initially thought up the idea. I have no idea. But the comment you just had there is true no matter why it was created. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, they exist to help homeless people. Okay, I'll call them bums, whatever. They help them all. But their jobs disappear if there aren't any homeless people. It's like, cops. If you cured crime, if crime suddenly went away, you wouldn't need any cops. Well, what are they going to do for a job? So, yeah, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And you hear that about the medical profession as well. That there's a cure for cancer. They're just not going to give it to you because they'd rather sell you pills for the rest of your life. And I don't know. I really like to believe that humans are better than that, and they wouldn't do that. But then you look throughout history where they've done exactly that, and you're like, shit, man, I don't know who to believe. I don't know if it's a humanitarian thing or if it's a way to look like a humanitarian thing to line your pockets. And Chris, I want you to respond to that same question as well.
It's a tough one. I mean, yeah, like Matt mentioned, I don't see any evidence of like point blank corruption involved with that. But like you said, yes, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I would say it's called integrity. You're talking about, do we have people in these positions of power that have integrity? And I don't think Tara has integrity. I think she thinks she does. I think she's very altruistic and she thinks she's doing a really good, important job. And some aspects of what they do there at the Devereaux Center is important and it is a good job. But like you mentioned, are you really going to work yourself out of a position like that? I don't think so. Not if you have integrity.
Right.
If you don't have integrity, you would. What's this comment?
So Guy Robinson, he just posted this comment. It says, never attribute to evil that which can be explained by stupidity. And I do think that that's a part of it. You know what I mean? It's
I mean,
okay.
Go ahead. Of Tara recently, or it was a YouTube, something they had for this point in time count. And I don't know if you have that, but I would almost call that stupid. I mean, that was a really weird video if people saw that. I don't know if it's evil or stupid or what, but it was bizarro. I think she's trying to show role play what it would be like to encounter a bum in the woods and how to approach them and ask them questions. But the way she mocks these bums, the way she acts like them, and it's just wild. You guys have to watch it. And
it was almost kind of condescending the way she did it. It also, the other thing is, I thought we should do a role play, a comedy retort to what they were doing. You know what I mean? But do it from the way we view the way the bums speak. And I thought that would be kind of interesting. Matt, you posted that video. And you've had run-ins with Tara, and she did to you what she did to me when I had my radio show, and I invited her on the radio show. All of a sudden, David Brock Smith shows up because he was in the neighborhood. He's never done that before. He never did it afterwards. But when Tara was there, all of a sudden he showed up because him and Tara are good buddies. She's actually a registered Republican, believe it or not. And he was speaking glowingly about her, about how the wonderful things she does. And like I said, I don't think she's evil. I really don't think she's corrupt. I think, like you said, she's such a believer. She believes her own bullshit that she's doing the right thing. When many of us see her, she reminds me of my grandmother and one of my uncles who, for all of his life, he lived with my grandmother, even though he was a meth head. He's still a meth head. She's passed away, but we could never give money to grandma because grandma would give the money to my uncle. And so it really put us in a hard position. Well, this is the same position that Tara is putting in, but she's not my freaking grandmother, and she needs to have her ass fired. And we need to have someone who actually wants to keep the rules enforced. So I want you to address that, if you would.
So here's the thing with Tara. She said this, oh, well, I'm actually a Republican thing multiple times. That means jack shit. Who else is also a Republican? David Brock Smith is a Republican. Mitt Romney's a Republican. Does that mean anything? No, you might as well call yourself space alien. It means absolutely nothing. So she is friends with David Brock Smith because they operate in the exact same manner. Okay. The one thing she is excellent at, and the one thing David Brock Smith is excellent at, is schmoozing and kissing ass. Okay. They know how to work the network. They know how to freaking butter people up and get them on their side, blah, 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 blah. So regarding the point in time count, I wanted to mention, I got some information from somebody who volunteered for the point in time count. I'm not going to name a name, but this person had seen that training video. Now, the training video, they were clearly role playing. It was incredibly stupid. Like, I mean, she shouldn't go to Broadway. She's not an actress. But this was the response. This person said the training video, she was talking to one of the supervisors of one of the departments involved in the point in time count, and says supervisor at one of the departments was like super embarrassed and upset that the video was role playing how it was. So I guess a bunch of people from the state commented on it, and it's going to be looked at and talked about more. So some other people saw the video that are in the homeless industrial complex and didn't like it either.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. They're going to go all woke on her ass because she said something wrong, I'm sure. Chris, you want to respond to that?
I mean, I'm glad that's happening, and I appreciate that you put that out there, that whoever that whistleblower was, I appreciate them, because it really was weird, and it's not doing a service, because I do have a heart for homeless people, for anyone who's in need. For people following, I use the word bum to refer to people who are trashing our neighborhoods, shitting on our businesses' doorsteps, breaking into cars, stealing things. That's a bum. That's somebody who doesn't want to get a job. They just want to live off the government and not give a care in the world about the neighborhood they live in. So if someone is just simply homeless and they're a good person, I have a heart for them and I will help them out. And I've done that in the past. And I toured the Devereaux Center. Tara was supposed to meet Drew Farmer and I for lunch. She stood us up, but Drew Farmer and I still went there and we did the tour. We met with the staff, and it's a wonderful facility during the day. The people that are there during the day are not the normal bums that you see wandering around Empire at night or trashing your neighborhood. They're actually people who have needs and they're being helped. And it's a wonderful program for those people. Same thing at the Coalbank Village, the pallet homes that they do. That's actually a good program. However, the rules that they have in place are not enforced. So Tara mentioning that people are not allowed on that facility if they're not getting a service, that's not true. They're selling drugs. It's an open air drug market and prostitution ring at the Devereaux Center at night. And I spoke with management when I went there for lunch, and I asked them, I said, this is a wonderful facility you have. Don't you think it would do a better service in the public's eye if you just had some security at night, or if you had a fence put up and didn't allow these people to be here? And they just really didn't want to hear that. They said that they come in the morning and they kick people out, but at night they're not there. They don't really have any way of doing that. They mentioned the property watch program that I already brought up. We know that that's ineffective. So you can drive by the Devereaux Center anytime at night, and it is a total shit show. And it does a disservice to their mission. And I wish, if there's any takeaway she could get from whatever you said, the state's going to look into that. I hope they tell her that too. And maybe it'll fall on her differently if it comes from them than from us. But it would be a much better situation if someone different was at the helm.
I guarantee it's going to be a state employee bitching because she didn't use the proper pronouns. It's going to be something as ridiculous as that. And so, yeah, it's stupid. I'll tell you what, it's a growing business out there, stupidity, but there's a lot of money in it because I've never seen any other industry other than politics where you fail upwards. It's amazing. I want to thank you guys for coming on. I think this was probably the best thing I've done in a while. I think this was really good. We've got a lot of viewers. We got a lot of comments. And I appreciate you guys coming on, but I want to give you each of you a last word. Chris, I'm going to start with you, and then I'll wrap it up with Matt. Is there anything that you want to tell people that you didn't get a chance to say?
Well, I appreciate you giving me a last word, because the city council sure as shit didn't.
You're out of here. Get the hell out.
Hey. No, I'll use my last word to give a shout out to Doug Washington. He posted a video tonight. You guys can go over to his website. That shit is hilarious. I don't know how we were blessed with Doug Washington in this community, but he is a straight up comedian. That is hilarious. He should do more of that. and I appreciate what he does, because in this insane, lawless world we live in right now, he brings some humor to it, and it's the right kind of humor we need, and I really appreciate it. So that's all I'll say for my last word.
Thank you, man. Matt, you got anything you'd like to take us out of here with?
I'm just going to add something to our last point that we were talking about. I was going to say, Chris was talking about the rules at Devereaux. And Chris will remember this. At the meeting last night, remember when Major Kaufman from the Salvation Army, he said he was told that their rules were a barrier to entry or something like that. This is why they bash like the South Coast Gospel Mission and places like Salvation Army that have strict rules. The people involved in the General Homeless Industrial Complex do not like faith-based institutions that have rules, or even just standard places that have rules. And he actually said, and this is, I'm going to disagree with him on this, that when he and Tara started working together, he started trying to remove those barriers to entry, which means making your rules not rules anymore. And so it really disheartened me, because I like the Salvation Army. They're one of those major organizations that, 99% of your donations actually go to their job and not to CEO salaries. So they're one of the few ones that I would donate to. It's pretty bad if they're taking cues from Tara, and I'm supportive of their warming center project over there. But I think, just like somebody who gets into politics and gets turned, flipped around, I think Tara's flipping the major, and that's going to turn, I think it's going to turn bad.
All right. And I want to thank you two gentlemen, and you have a good rest of your night. Okay. You all take care.
Thanks, Rob.
All right. I want to thank all of you who joined me tonight, and I'm going to try to do this more often, this just off the cuff show on issues that happen right away, because it's hard from week to week to catch all the issues that are happening in our county. And I'm going to continue to try to do that, because I think, well, first off, I think there's a vacuum in this county. I think there's a vacuum in a lot of counties across this state, across the country, where there's not people out there giving real news, not telling the real story of what's happening in their cities and in their counties. And that's something that a lot of people don't focus on. You tune into Joe Rogan, you tune into Kirk, from TSA, not TSA. I can't think of the show that he's on, but gosh, I can't even think of his name. But Alex Jones is another one. You talk to those people, they're all national wide. They're talking about national news. And that's why I was so intent on focusing on what we're doing here in Coos County, what we do here in Coos County, because this is the only place where you and I and Matt and Chris are going to be able to have real direct change. It's the only place where we're going to have some effect. We can go to the county commissioners meetings. We can go to the city council meetings, and we can, just like Chris, even though he got kicked out, I guarantee you the city councilors are still talking about that incident. I can guarantee you one of the city councilors or Mayor Benetti himself is watching this broadcast. I can almost guarantee you that. I know the commissioners usually watch it on a regular basis. I know Rod Taylor, his wife, had sent me a couple of texts. She's watching this right now. So they know that this is going on. And if I came onto the air every week and I only talked about what happened in Salem or Portland or what's happening in Washington, D.C., what matter would it be? Who would give a fuck? Who would care? I mean, we are living our lives here in Coos County. And, I don't want to just exclude, a lot of areas that are close to us. Douglas County and Curry County, and even in Lane County, we have a direct availability to make change. And it's not going to happen unless people are involved, and people can't get involved unless they know what's happening. So I just want to reiterate, there's a abandoned pool meeting. They're trying to bring back the pool, and I'm all for it as long as it's not coming out of my taxes. And if they tried to put it on the ballot, it would get defeated. It's already been defeated once at the ballot, but I'm not against the pool. And I'll probably be at that meeting, and I'd like to hear what ideas they have. And I'll probably come on here again to talk about it. But that's happening at 11 a.m. at the warehouse, where they have the farmers market on the boardwalk in Bandon, 11 a.m. This is happening Tuesday, January 30th. And then tomorrow night, this is very important, at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, Monique Despain is having her campaign meeting. And it's going to be a really interesting meeting because there's going to be a lot of different people in the Republican Party who are running against each other in the primary. And for those of you who are not in touch with the elections, the primary is where Republicans and Democrats beat the hell out of each other. Because Republicans are not running against the Democrats and the Democrats aren't running against the Republicans. They're running against each other. And so we're going to beat the hell out of each other. And hopefully in the end, it's going to be like DeSantis and Trump. In the end, hopefully the people who lose will be able to accept that they lost and go ahead and acknowledge that fact, but continue the hard work that we have to continue on, because those of us who aren't even a Republican or a Democrat, I'm not affiliated, I'm going to keep both of them accountable, and I'm going to make sure that you people know about it. So I want to thank you so much for tuning in, and I want to thank Matt and Chris for coming on, because I just gave them such a short notice to do this. And so we will be back with it. And until I am back with more for you, you carry on, Coos County. Carry on.